Welcome back, everybody. We have an announcement today coming from WB Games announcing that we are yet again getting another Batman Arkham game. And this, of course, is being developed by WB Montreal, the same team that brought us Batman Arkham Origins. The title is called Batman Arkham Insurgency, and there's not really a whole lot that's known about it, other than it does take place after Origins, and we are going to see the likes of villains such as Maxi Zeus, Killer, Moth, and Anrarky. And the main villain for this game is supposed to be Owlman and the Court of Owls. So this is pretty exciting news. The Batman Arkham series have always been very good games. Despite Arkham Origins having some glitches that were very frustrating and not being the greatest in the series, I'm going to talk a bit more about Origins and kind of what I want from Insurgency here in a little bit. I do just want to touch up on Batman Arkham Knight and say, you know, same thing with that. Despite some major things going on there, despite some irritating controls with the Batmobile, things like that, you know, that could have, the combat in the Batmobile could have played out just a little bit better. Or not happened as frequently or as much, or changed things up. Sometimes it could be a little bit frustrating. But overall, the series has been very solid. I still think Batman Arkham Asylum is the best entry, but overall I've been fairly satisfied with each of the games, especially through the combat, the way that the characters and the stories go, and things like that have all been very interesting. So let's go ahead and talk about the series as a whole, and kind of what I want to see from Batman Arkham Origins. Or from an upgrade from Batman Arkham Origins to this. The first thing I want in the game is, please, for heaven's sake, do not make Joker the main villain of this game. I am so tired of having Batman face off against Joker in these games. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now, I like Joker as a villain, don't get me wrong. I find him very interesting. It's just Joker has had 4 games where he's really been behind everything, where he's been the final boss, and I'm tired of it. Batman has such a huge lore of different villains and people that they could bring in from the DC comics and showcase. We really don't need to see another Joker put in there. So I'm really hoping that this time they don't pull an Arkham Knight like they did. You're expecting this epic showdown with a freaking Scarecrow, and all you get is yet another fight with Joker. That would piss me off to no end. And on a side note of that too, you know, I hope that in a way they kind of incorporate some of these villains a little bit better into the plot, where they don't feel just like hand-me-downs or things like that. That was one thing Arkham City did really, really well. Was a lot of the side quests, they felt more or less they were adding to the story and kind of what was going on in that respect, rather than just kind of pushing the narrative forward like Arkham Origins did. Even Arkham Knight had some really good motivations behind some of their villains, like Mr. Pig, I think that was his name. The fart knocker that would leave all of his victims strewn up, and you had to go try and find out who they were, and all of that. That was all really, really interesting. I really hope that WB Montreal can take that and make it their own this time, and make it so the villains are a bit more have a bit more going on to them. That's something I definitely would like to see in this. Another thing I want to see is the combat definitely needs to take a... The combat was solid in Origins, I'll say that, but they could really take a look at kind of what Rocksteady had done and go with it. But that's something that they need to focus on a little bit better. I think they could incorporate some better gadgets, some more unique things into fights, and kind of make it their own. Make it their own satisfying thing. I also hope that Batman Arkham Insurgency retains the mature rating. And I hope they don't I hope they don't decide to kind of just go around it and make it as lighthearted, because in a lot of ways, Arkham Knight started out really, really dark, and I enjoyed that. And then they toned it, for some reason, it almost like kind of toned down at the end. I want to see this dark theme through and through the game. I really think that that's a very fitting environment for Batman. One of the last things I actually don't want to see in the game is the inclusion of multiplayer. Part of me thinks this is why Origin in some ways lacked in story content, why it lacked in side quests, why it lacked in repetitive things to do, and don't get me wrong, the Arkham series has always had some repetitive collectibles, but they seem more tedious for whatever reason in Origins than they did in any of the other ones. So that's something that I definitely want to see them take away and focus less on, is the multiplayer. Or just not included at all, because honestly, the multiplayer for Origins really didn't do anything for me, and I thought it was just seriously a cop-out to popularize on the multiplayer and just popularize on multiplayer in general and try and get people who play multiplayer games to go out and actually buy this game. But despite that, another thing I would really, really like to see in this game is a better variety of boss fights. The Arkham series has never been known for having standout boss fights, except for a few. One of the we had Bane in a way, and then the Joker. They all kind of molded together in Arkham Asylum, and didn't really stand out. They were kind of the same copy-paste thing through and through, except for Poison Ivy. Poison Ivy was a very unique boss fight in the first Batman, in the Batman Arkham Asylum. But then we had Batman Arkham City take a more interesting turn and gave us a very, very unique and memorable boss fight with Mr. Freeze. What made Mr. Freeze so interesting was how, in a way, the boss would incorporate different elements of the environment into what you were using, so you couldn't reuse that same attack again. You, in turn, had to try and figure out something else to use an attack. And I'd like to see more strategy kind of mixed in with that. That was probably one of my favorite boss fights in the entire series. I really did enjoy the Ra's al Ghul fight as well. I thought that was pretty cool. The Clayface one, not so much. And Batman Arkham Knight, to be honest, I don't really remember too much about that. I remember the fight with the Dark Knight being unique in a lot of ways. I remember I remember liking that aspect of like how Batman was kind of on matched par with some of his tactics and things like that from the Arkham Knight. That may be kind of hard to incorporate in there, considering that it's not Arkham Knight and Batman has no villains that we currently know of in this game that are going to be able to challenge him on a stealth level and things like that. I'm excited to play this game, though. I really, really am. I enjoy the Batman Arkham series, like I said. I still think Arkham Asylum is the best in the series, but I don't think... I think some people were too harsh on Arkham Origins. It was a satisfying game that did have relative flaws, but considering that the studio had really done nothing exceptional before then, it was still a really damn good first game. I mean, it was almost... in a lot of ways, it was kind of like Rocksteady. I mean, they just, out of nowhere, made this amazing first game that everybody fell in love with. So, I think if WB pays attention to the details, polishes up the little things here and there, they can definitely get that feel of what Rocksteady has done. They can definitely make it their own and make it on par with some of the other Batman games. Your thoughts, your opinions, guys, leave those down below in the comment box. What villains do you guys want to see return? What villains do you guys think should return? Or what new villains do you want to see? I mean, Batman has such a history of different villains, and not just they could take from anything from DC really and put in there. I mean, Hell, we even had Deathstroke in Origins, so, you know, something out of the Justice League or the Teen Titans or something like that is not out of the question. But a villain I always thought would be really interesting in Batman's lore to play around with a bit more would be the Puppeteer and Scarface. I would really like to see something along those lines there. I would like to see a more prominent role to the Riddler rather than just playing in the back of it, you know, kind of like him being his narcissistic way. Like, front and center, I want the Riddler to be more like a fight, almost to say, rather than anything else. I wouldn't mind seeing Penguin again. Penguin's always been one of the really awesome villains. Those are just some of the villains that I do want to see. There's, of course, probably more that I can think of later on that does not come into my head right now. But go ahead and leave those down below, guys. What villains do you want to see? What are your hopes from this game? Do you want to see the inclusion of multiplayer? Do you not so much care about the multiplayer? You know, things like that. Go ahead and leave that below. Be sure to hit subscribe there for me. New content is going to be coming your way, and most importantly, stay happy, be happy, game happy. The Spoony Bard is checking out.